Hey, hello. Right, let's get to it. Okay, so legs, feet, those kind of things. Well, feet first and then knees. First of all, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have one question.
Go.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted. Catherine, I just wanted to ask you about the calf muscle and the flexing and pointing of the feet. So I find that when I dorsiflex and really get my toes to point towards my knee, then I feel, I don't know if the right word is stretch, but a nice sensation along my calf muscle.
Yeah.
And when I point, I feel nothing, I guess. And I just wanted to, I'm just doing it now to see what I feel. I'm just wondering whether, when we ask people to flex their toes in, maybe when we're trying to stretch the hamstrings, and then we also, is the intention then to also get the calf stretch? That's actually the question.
Well, what do you guys think? There's a lot of eating going on here. Is hands up for eating or hands up for... Okay, Anya, because those are eating, and then Mandana.
No, I'm not eating. I'll have a cup of tea though. I'm just doing it here as Firdoz asked the question. But you're stretching in both ways. You know, when your foot is dorsiflexed and plantar flexed, I can feel my calf muscle working in both ways.
Okay, so everybody just sit where you are now and take your legs, straighten it out in front of you, and then kind of point your toes as much as you possibly can. Then reach down and feel your calf muscle. So really push forward the toe. Can you feel your calf muscle? Now relax it, put it down on the ground. Feel your calf muscle. Can you feel a difference? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the job of your gastrocnemius muscle, is to plantar-flex. So when you plantar-flex, like pointing your toes, your calf muscle, you should feel it go, it'll become like a little round ball, okay? When you bring your feet towards you, that when you're sitting in a seated forward bend, and you, what's called dorsiflexion, so it's bringing your feet that way towards you, you'll feel a stretch in your calf. So think about it, yeah. So think about, most of you will know, what calf stretches do runners do?
I put my foot against the wall like that.
Sorry for those. Mandana?
Sorry.
The dorsiflex?
Yeah.
Talking very technically.
They do those, like at the wall stretches, and they take their foot back and they're stretching out their calf muscle. So the question goes back, so the question goes back to, why do you think in yoga we always doing that flex the feet thing? Dorsiflex. Forget about dorsiflex and plantar flex if that confuses you. Just in yoga we instruct flex the feet, so we'll just stick with that. Janine?
To activate the muscles.
In what way?
Lengthen.
Yeah, well, I would say just to get them on, to turn them on.
So,
depending on
why would we, in Paschimottanasana, so seated forward bend, why would we instruct flex the feet instead of point the feet? Because we've just worked out that they're both working the muscle in some way. Ava?
If we are in Paschimottanasana, we want to stretch the back line of the body, and as everything is connected, part of the back line is the calves and also the plantar fascia. So if you want to stretch the whole back line, we would like to have it as long as possible. So from the top of the head all the way down to the big toes, more or less.
Okay, so we instruct flex the feet. There's a lot of different reasons maybe why we instruct it. What would happen, what would be easier for most people if we instructed flexing the feet, or we just let the feet kind of just flop about? What would be easier in terms of a forward bend? Tegan?
It's definitely easier for people to have their feet turned off than active or drawing together. So that even the cue could just, even if it's not necessarily flexed, it could just be having the bones of the feet coming to touch the ankle bones, maybe just to like turn the toes and knees up to the ceiling.
Yeah.
I find that a good verbal cue.
That's a good, so okay, that's good. So if the feet aren't activated, we're not stretching, sorry, let me rephrase. If we're not dorsiflexing, flexing the feet, then we're not stretching the calf muscles as much. So as Ava said, we're doing a long chain here, you know, right from literally from our ankles the whole way up to our necks. It's a stretch. And if we reduce any part of that stretch, the pose will become easier for people. So for a lot of people, and this is something you get to know when you teach more and more and more, is you start being able to tell when somebody's actually a little bit more restricted in their calf muscles than they are in their hamstrings. So often we immediately go, you know, they can't bring their heels down in downward dog. Maybe maybe their hamstrings aren't that flexible, but frequently it's calves as well, or even more so. So it's a little bit different thing. So then bring it back to what Tegan said. If we then want to take out, and I'm saying all of these things are optional, right? But it's just different reasons why we do those. I mean, why would you not be able to point your toes in Paschimottanasana? Tegan?
Well, the reason I wouldn't, I don't know if this is the reason, but when you're pointing your toes, you're stretching through the top of your ankle, not like Ava was saying, getting the back line stretch. You are stretching through the top.
Stretching through, so you are definitely stretching through the top, just a plantar flexion of the ankles, but there's no fundamental reason for having the feet flexed or the feet plantar flexed or the feet dorsiflexed. So just normal feet, really, really, really seriously flexed feet, and then pointed toes. So they're all just ranges of ankle movement, and they all are just emphasizing different bits of the body at a different point in time. That's all it is. And most of the time, in terms of flexion in yoga, dorsiflexion in yoga, it may have been back in the day when they wanted to stretch the entire body line, the back line, or it could have just been because it looks good, right? But it's like, that's what we like. As a rule in yoga, we don't point toes, right? Can you think of anywhere where we point the toes? I can think of one or two. Sorry, Cara, I'm thinking if I point at you, you can see me. Wake up. Caro.
Yeah, like in the, can't think of the name now, but when you're standing with your leg up and just like holding your leg from like muscles, not like hand to big toe, but hands wherever, but leg up, I always kind of like point my foot there.
You can point your, absolutely, and that's actually a very good example, because you could either dorsiflex or plantarflex your foot. It just depends. Tegan, you were going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say I don't do it there. But it's exactly what we're saying. It's not wrong. It's just I don't.
Yeah, you just don't, exactly, and we don't, you know. So Mandana, then Ashton, and then Ava, and then Juliet. That's like, oh wow.
Okay, I'll wait. Just in pigeon, the back leg comes pointed, right? Because we are then stretching.
Why in pigeon? Why would the back leg be plantar flex pointed?
Because then we are stretching or activating.
Another reason why. If we be talking about full pigeon, you're talking about when your leg is up.
Yeah.
Right? We're moving into Ekpada Raj. Does anybody know the answer of why we would want to point our foot rather than dorsiflex? Janine. Can't hear you. You're still muted.
Sorry. Very simple reason would be if your foot is pointed, it's easier to grab hold of it.
Exactly. And what else?
You can
Bidet.
get it.
Well, you're working on the quad, so it's the same, exactly the same as what we were saying in a seated forward fold, just doing the opposite, so stretching the whole front.
You can stretch the whole front that way, but largely the reason that we point the foot when we're in that pose is because it's closer to our head. And that's what we want, right? Like for those of you that have watched the video, we actually, with yoga poses are such complex things in the entirety, even the standing poses, that we often need to use all the different joint angles along the chain in order to complete the pose. So we talked about it a little bit in Lotus, and we talked that would be the same in Ekapada Raja Kapotasana, where you're going and you want your toe, exactly as Janine says, as close, preferably, unless you're a big backbender, to your head as you possibly can. So if you dorsiflexed, it would be further away, right? And if you pointed, it's like there's dorsiflexion, there's point. So you're gaining an extra, however long your foot is. Does that make sense?
So there's no
Else would you have your foot pointed in yoga? Sandra, you've got your little hand up.
Yes, in the crow pose.
Sometimes you absolutely can. A lot of people do it, and sometimes people flex. The Iyengas make sure you flex the feet. I don't know why. They just do, but absolutely. What about things like Parigasana, gate pose? With your foot is like that, right? Like pointed down. Purvottasana, reverse plank. Okay, stretching the tops of the muscles down, but not that common. We much more in a dorsiflex state, right? Even if we're just standing, we're in, we dorsiflex all the time. Then I want to bring it now to inversions. What are your thoughts on what your feet should be doing in inversion? Because in the videos, I give you a lot of different explanations. My opinion, other teachers' opinions. What are your opinions? What works for you, Claire?
I think it again comes down to preference. There is no right or wrong, like you showed in the videos. I mean, if you think about yoga teachers who have a dancing background, they point their feet in almost everything. It doesn't really make a difference when I'm doing my headstands or whatever. Flexing my feet and pushing through the feet feels very like it doesn't change whether I'm getting into that position or going into my back or not versus my pointed feet. It's more like, I'm going to call it an aesthetic. It looks pretty when you point your toes, but is it necessary to point your toes to get into that position? Not necessarily. Same way it's not necessarily helping to flex. Preference.
Preference. And preference why? Besides looks, Roxy. There you are, down in the bottom there. Roxy. She's frozen, I think.
Yes. Please, can you repeat?
Oh, I think
Can you
Roxy,
hear me?
we'll catch up with you, Roxy, when you unfrozen. So besides looks, why else would we be flexing or pointing our feet when we're upside down? Tegan.
I think flexing or pointing through the feet, especially when we're upside down, is a kind of like, is that extension through the leg. So it's that reaching up that we get to feel through the feet, whether it's pointing or flexing. It's just kind of that, it gives you, I find it gives me that draw up.
So the connection, the kind of almost like awareness, the proprioception of, my feet are up there doing something or other. Roxy, are you back?
Yeah.
She's still frozen, I think. Taryn, you've got your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just going to add that it also helps me to engage my legs more. So it helps with the lift.
Sorry, thing is making a hell of a noise. An interesting noise. Sorry, Taryn, say again. It just went really strange noise.
Sorry, no worries. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, no, I was just saying that pointing helps me focus on my engagement of my legs. So it helps engage all my inner thighs and lift in my inversions. So I find it helps a lot with balance and like the lift of my body.
Yes.
So like in a shoulder stand.
Yes, again, it's that thing of being aware and I don't know who said, I've just forgotten. You know, it depends on what your training, maybe it was taken. Your trainings are before that. Like if you've come from a gymnastic background or a ballet background, then it's been beaten into you for years, you know, point. Whereas for me, I haven't got those backgrounds. I've been beaten up by Iyengar teachers and Ashtanga teachers who just said flex, flex, flex. So a classic thing for me, so I'm happy in all inversions, so I can pretty much point or flex or do whatever, it doesn't matter really. But what I've realized is the more complex they are, I revert back to what I've been trained in. So learning to handstand press, you meant to, it's a gymnastic move. You meant to point the toes as you go up. I cannot do it. It's just, my feet go like this, they flex. And I go up in a flex position because it's more complex. When I'm up there and comfortable, then I can actually make my feet do whatever you guys would want me to do in a yoga class, right? So that also pertains to somebody who's learning inversions. What are you going to do with them, with their feet? Since you're all teachers. Ava, Roxy, I don't know whether to call on you or not, because are you there or not?
Yes. Can
Okay,
you hear me?
let's try Roxy.
Sorry, it's quite windy here today. Just to add quickly on the flex and point, I find like floint, is it how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Floint your feet when you activate through the ball of your toes. Me personally for inversion really helped me find like Tegan was saying, that kind of like lengthening and like drawing up more than pointing or flexing. But I guess if we had to instruct anyone through inversion, it would be individual. I mean, it would be subjective in a way that they would feel what's best for them, maybe to hold the pose and to feel the activation. So again, no right or wrong.
Yes, I think that's right, especially with learning inversions, because for a lot of people learning, not for gymnasts, obviously, you know, they're fine. But, you know, for a lot of people learning inversions, it's a really challenging new thing. And if we are insistent on them doing one particular thing, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because what you do want to do is bring attention to their feet. Because what happens when people learn inversions? What is their awareness of what's going on with their legs? None. Yeah, they have no idea what is happening with their legs. And I can see it in a lot of your handstands as well, is that I can see you guys, you so, not all of you, but you so pretty much focused on what's going on in the hands, what's going on in the shoulders, what's going on in the getting up, looking, and most of you haven't got that much awareness yet, you will, of what's going on with your legs, right? And if you take it to a normal beginner going into like a little headless headstand or a headstand or even a shoulder stand, they're not really aware of what's going on with their feet. They don't even know what their backs are doing in downward dog, and they feel a hell of a lot more secure in a downward dog than they do in an inversion. So it's a process that you have to assess as you're going along. Claire and Roxy, you both got your hands up. Do you want to say something, Claire? No. Roxy, do you want to say something? And then Ava wants to say something. No, Roxy, Ava, go.
Yeah, for me, it's when I do handstand or any other inversion at the wall, when I first learned it, for me, it was like I have way less, I have a nervous system condition anyway, so I have not a lot of feeling in my feet, but still I have way less, and I think it's the same for everyone, nerves, feeling or sensation in my heels than I have in my toes. because the toes are like the fingers, and the density of the nerves is way higher there. So for me, it helped a lot to get a little bit more awareness of where my feet are and what they are doing when I try to touch the wall with the feet instead of with the heel. Even though for me, flexing the foot, for me, gives me more length on the back line because I'm very short on the back line, and it helps me to flex the foot instead of pointing them, because then I feel the length. And because I'm not feeling it on the front side, it's long anyway. I need to feel the length on the back side. So for me, flexing it is better. But if I want to get a little bit more awareness, and I think that's the point, it always depends what you want to achieve with pointing or flexing. So maybe it's always good to do both, to just let people try the one and then the other, and play around with everything. So with a central awareness, it's better for me to point the toes at the wall and try to get some feeling there.
But that's
maybe
perfect point. So I think we're all kind of agreeing that it's to do with bringing attention to that area, to create tension through the whole back line, to be able to help balancing, to be aware of what's actually happening with our feet. I love the nerve fibers where, and actually if I think of my own practice, I can't remember who said flointing, that they liked floint. I think it was Roxy said flointing. For me, when I floint, I get a real stretch in the plantar fascia, the arches of the foot, and I can really feel it. So for me, it makes actually no difference at all to my inversion shape at all. But it's a sensation that travels through me to my brain much quicker than a flex or a point. And also I'm a terrible pointer. I get cramps when I point, so I don't like it. Okay, so it's a sensation thing. So I think we've kind of covered that. Does anybody else have anything to say? No? Okay, cool. All right, next point. This standing Tadasana, second toe forward stuff. Okay, I don't know how many of you say it in terms of your teaching or your own practice. So it can be anything, second toe facing forward, big toes together, heels slightly apart, ankles together, all of those instructions. So what do we think about that? Nothing is wrong, right? Eva?
Yeah, that's exactly the case. Nothing is wrong because it depends on the individual. I would always, maybe if I teach beginners, I would like to keep it simple at the beginning, and I won't hurt them if I tell them have the feet this way or that way. But I wouldn't tell them that if you're not having the feet this way, you will hurt your knees or whatever. So sometimes for the sake of being simple and straightforward so that people can remember things, and I would maybe go with whatever, pointing forward, the second toe or whatever, but I would rather also again have them bring awareness to their feet and then see what's happening if they point them in or out, and then they will eventually be able to see what suits their own body, but not in the very first class. But in the end, it's always, I think, it especially with the feet, so many other joints that are way up in the chain are influenced by what the feet do. So I think that you can't say what would be right or wrong, because it's right or wrong for different people. And maybe you have to, if you have a really injured knee and that is really at risk, then you will have to even do something with your feet, which would be counterproductive in any other way, just to save your knee in that case. So it depends on your body and even on the situation your body is in today. So it's yeah.
And also the thing is as well, is it's where do we think it came from? You know, like the second toe forward, I don't know, you know, like I say in the videos, all of our experiences are different. It depends on which teacher you've gone to, who you've been taught by, and your 200 hours, all of those kind of things. So where do we think that actually came from, that we want that second toe pointed forward, or in the instructions? Sorry, Claire, you've got your hand up?
I do, but this is I don't know, there's what's getting me a little bit confused, right, is then if everyone is so different, what are we actually telling people to do at the end of the day? You know, my training, I've actually never heard of this second toe facing forward, never in my life. But you do want your feet trying to be parallel, you want your arches lifted. This was, again, Catherine, you mentioned that you don't address that sort of thing in class. And then for me, I was like, oh, but that's so confusing, because if I want to teach people to have nice balance, bearing in mind that I'm, again, coming from my own experiences where I actually used to have sort of collapsed in feet, and being taught to stand better with a lifted arch actually allows me to balance better in my feet, so even one-legged as well as two-legged. And then we focus on knee sort of lining up with that middle toe so that your knees aren't caving inwards or outwards. But then you pointed out, you know, you've got some people who are, so it gets like, holy crackers.
Thing. So the knee lined up with the middle toe is the same instruction as the second toe forward. Okay, so it's same toe forward. So my challenge to you all is to go, you saw on the video, and there's like bones, right? What actually happens if you make those instructions, line your knee up with your middle toe, what actually happens? Okay, in terms of the different bone structures of people. So it's an impossible thing to, lifting your arches is a very different thing. How would you instruct that, Claire?
So there are a few ways, because it all depends on people's feet. But one idea, I think Tegan mentioned it earlier, is almost imagining that you're pulling your feet apart, but you're not actually pulling it, but you pull. The other thing is you almost imagine that you're trying to pull the mat together, and that movement sort of lifts in the arch, if that makes sense. So
I'm going to do it now, and you're going to instruct me. Okay, I'm going to stand on a chair, and you're going to instruct me. See if I can get. Okay, and I want you to see what happens to my legs. And I think I'm fairly ordinary. Okay, can you see me?
Yes, I'm just about to pin your video so that you're the biggest one.
Okay.
Woo! Okay, but I can't see your feet.
Okay, I can't help you with that. I can't get any higher. Okay. And now?
Okay, cool. Got you. Okay, so now I must instruct you. Catherine?
I'm listening.
Oh, okay. All righty. So I can't 100% see you, so bear with me. So try feeling the knees turning slightly outwards from the hip joint. Then feel the toes trying to pull towards your heels almost. Just a lifting. You might even feel a bit of a spasm going to the arch. Can you feel anything there?
Wait. So draw my knees out.
Yes.
Yes. What's happening to my knees?
A lot of blackness.
I can't get any closer. Let's see if I can get any closer. Okay. All right. You'll have to ignore my feet. Is that better?
I think so.
Okay. So if you can't see, I don't know why it's so dark, right? Okay. So what happens with me, here I'm standing normally, right? Already my knees are slightly in. Okay, my feet are dead straight. I know you can't see me, all right? My knee, see if I can put a little bit more, but I think it's just going to get dark. Okay, so if you instruct me to have my feet facing forward, can you see, I don't know how clear it is, but my knees roll in. So the minute you say to me then, draw in through the hips, my knees roll out, and you can't see my feet, but now my feet are trying to go out.
Okay.
Okay, so it's shame. I'm so sorry you can't see. I don't know why. I've got a really, really, let's say, curved shin.
Yeah.
And like I said on the video, I've got miserable malalignment syndrome or whatever it's called. So you can actually, this is really good. Can you see here how my knee is pointed in, but my foot is straight forward?
Straight forward, yeah.
Can you see? Can you see in that? Yeah. My knee's pointed in. If I then bring my knee out, which is what most people in yoga do, what's happening to my foot?
It's turning.
It's turning, I'm not moving. So here I am totally, my foot is dead straight forward, right? Parallel, all of those things. Look at my knee. Can you see it? I put my hand here, okay?
Yeah.
That's the angle. So then if you say most people in yoga would go, warrior two, knee out. Now I'm not moving my foot at all. I'm just moving my knee. What happens to my foot?
Shift out.
Okay? Because
That,
if I'm not, if I'm in a warrior two or any of those things, my foot's on the ground. So I can't, you know, wiggle it around. So it's literally, and I want you all to go and do this after this. You look at this, you have your structural unit there, toes facing forward, your normal instruction, what's happening to your knee, and it's not because I've got my knee coming in. If I move it over there, then my foot just turns out, okay? Can you see? I'm not, I know it looks like I'm moving my shin, but I'm not, I'm just moving my hip.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to do both. So the minute, ooh, I'm on a low chair now. So the minute I end up, if you instruct outer edges, then I end up with my knee drawing in.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand that? I'm sorry it wasn't such a good demonstration. I don't know why it's so dark for you guys. Maybe it's just the black pants. So my question to you about that instruction is, again, and I say it the whole way through when you start looking at the other videos, is as yoga teachers, we instruct a lot. We verbally cue a lot around those kind of things in the simpler poses. But when it gets to the advanced poses, we don't say anything. Okay? So if you were teaching somebody Natarajasana, full dancers, foot on the head, would you care where their foot was placed, their standing foot? No, you'd be going, wow, that's excellent, well done. You can do Natarajasana in the middle of the room. Like, where do you care where their foot, their standing foot is? And don't get me wrong, I think there's, like Ava said, like Claire said, I think it's great to bring attention to the feet. That's the whole job of yoga, but that's a different reason to that. So what, if we're talking about arches, and it says it in the video, how do we help people increase their arches? Not increase, make their arches, their feet arches stronger. And then Firdaus, I'll get to you. Mandana, did you say something?
Yeah, I think, sorry, I've only been instructing one-on-one, but I think for the arch aspect, I have this problem myself. And I think the only way to make it better is to do some exercises sideways at home, do maybe a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes in the evening, and you have to be disciplined with it. And it's not something that in a yoga class you're going to activate suddenly, cling within a minute and get the person to, you can bring the awareness once again and make them realize that this is something maybe they need to work on, but it's a muscle as well, I imagine. So it needs to get used to this. It needs to connect.
How we strengthen arches. Cara, did you want to say how we strengthen it?
I can share what I think I know. I mean, you also mentioned it in the video, and also what like Mandana said, you know, this kind of like on the sofa, kind of spreading your toes wide, curling, maybe then also picking up pans from the floor, or kind of, I also think that maybe doing like a little bit of a parkour in your home, like walking barefoot, or also in the summertime, maybe walking barefoot outside over like different surfaces, but also at home you can, I don't know, spread around blocks and whatever you can find on the floor and kind of put pressure and load on your foot in different ways.
That's how you strengthen arches. Flointing. That, I mean, if you all got bare feet now, do it and feel what's that, but actually not just doing it like that, coming up onto your toes. So what would be brilliant, Claire, and then Firdaus, then Ava, would be if you were trying to get somebody to bring focus and transfer weight in a certain way. That's fantastic because it's bringing real attention. You know, it's like we're on that journey of meditation. But if you wanted to get them to really strengthen their arches, because if you've got collapsed arches, you can't all of a sudden not have collapsed arches. You've got to build the muscle. But what you could do, and they do it a lot in yoga synergy, I don't know who's done that, that type of yoga, is you literally come up onto the ball of your feet in things like Utkatasana, chair, in Tadasana. So you're coming up onto the ball of your foot, and that's a really good way of strengthening arches. So two sides of things, you know. One is the bringing of awareness to things, the lifting up, grounding, all of those things, and then the other is actually the strengthening side of arches. For Dose, and then Ava had something to say.
No, I was just going to also say that the coming up onto the ball of the foot, that was what I found was a good way to strengthen the arches. But the question I had when you were demonstrating your knee thingy was, because you told us that, you know, the knee and the foot and that those two are the reasons that your knee goes in, we knew that. But if you were just looking at somebody, you could also deduce that it would have something to do with the hip, and that maybe their knee was coming in because they were not able to externally rotate their hip enough, right?
Look, there is this thing, and again, it kind of drives my body a little bit mad, but would work for somebody else, is that people will actually say, when they see my shape, they will say, oh, you know, your knees rolling in, especially if you're going to make me do big toes together, heels apart, that exacerbates my shape. Okay, because everything is rolling in anyway. So if you do that, to me, it exacerbates my shape. But then people go, it's not because of the way you blind yourself up, it's because your glutes aren't working. And then they make me activate glute med, glute max, and they're external rotators, but I'm fixed on the ground. So then it becomes massively uncomfortable for me. I activate, and then my knees get pulled up, but because you're making me do internal rotation from my shins down. Does everybody understand this? It's like, so I'm making me externally rotate my hips in a standing posture, right? To pull the knee out, but my foot, you're insisting on having dead straight forward. And for me, that's internal rotation. For most people, then you're basically making my knee talk. It's not, I mean, nothing's going to explode, but it just makes I'm like, what are you doing? Just leave me alone. I just want to stand here, you know. So and the reason for doing that is much more, for me, it's not an awareness thing. And I love awareness things, like Claire is saying, but it's not an awareness thing. It's because somebody's looking at me and going, I don't like the way you look.
No, but I just think, how would you know? Like,
say again for this.
If you were teaching somebody, you know, you wouldn't. How would you know whether it was an issue from the foot to the knee or from the knee to the hip?
In all honesty, I would just not go there. It's not necessary to go there. It's like, you know, I'm not a yoga therapist. I'm not a physiotherapist. I'm teaching a yoga class, or that I don't need to. I would much want. What I used to do with feet was, my favorite thing to do with feet was have people close their eyes and just move really slowly forward and really slowly backward to try and find a midpoint of the feet from forward to back, where you can get this sensation of incredible light. And that for me is just the awareness to the feet. I don't care if somebody's got, you know, their whole inner ankle and everything together, or it's slightly heels apart, or maybe their feet are slightly turned apart. It's irrelevant to me, because it's not that important. If I want to bring awareness, I can think of a whole load of other ways to do it that's better. I can do it by manipulating things, going forward and backwards, or I can get people to stand on one leg. That normally brings awareness to their feet quite a lot. So I'm not sure that we're just not overfixing. For, you know, again, I want to go back to bringing awareness is brilliant, right? But I'm not sure that we need to overfix on feet. It's like, why? You know, those people, they're in our class for an hour and they walk around all day long with their feet like this. None of you walk with your big toes touching and your heels apart. You'd look like an idiot, okay? Unless you've got weird legs or weirder than me. You'd be walking like a duck. You know, and people walk like this. Generally, they turn their feet out slightly because it helps them balance. The nervous system goes, that's good, I like that. So that's why I'm going Ava, and then Cara.
Yes, that's what I want to say ties in with that. I'm not so much for awareness to put the feet the way I want them to bring them, but to feel what suits their own bodies. So to bring awareness to their foot like you do with leaning forward and backwards and right and left to find the center of the student's foot. And what is really interesting, if you do rolling of the feet with a myofascial ball, if you do it on one side, and then we are so much visually orientated. So when we say, okay, put your feet parallel, what most of the times that second toe alignment is, then we do it and we think, okay, this is now that our feet are parallel. And when you roll one feet and then close your eyes and you know your feet are visually parallel and you just feel, you will notice, and people will notice that for them, it doesn't feel parallel at all. Because the feet that you have rolled will naturally be much more sensitive because the nerves are turned on there, and people get the awareness of where their foot would like to be, would feel actually like being aligned parallel. And it doesn't have to be parallel in a mathematical sense that two lines are really the same distance apart at any part of the line. So that is very interesting if you have people roll their feet both sides and then close their eyes and try to find a parallel stance. That is their internal parallel, and that sometimes helps for a lot of standing poses because that is their way to find balance.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's amazing as well because it's actually letting the nervous system determine. So if, you know, not to go into physics or anything like that, but, and, you know, I think you're starting to get an idea about center of mass, gravity. We're all very different shapes, everybody here, right? I mean, I looked at all of when you measured all your proportions, and people are like long, and like so many of you unusually have got quite long torsos and shorter legs proportionally. And exactly, so, and lots of different things. And shapes. I mean, this is a classic thing as well. I hope you can see, maybe just by looking at me, okay? And it comes up in, can you see the shape of my hips? And I'm actually quite small, but I'm very hippie, okay? I've got a series, it's called a carrying angle. It goes down like this. So my center of gravity is not going to be the same, and I can't demonstrate somebody with straight hips, but if you imagine, you know, let's make that bigger, okay? Somebody with straight hips, how they balance is going to be a totally different thing than me. When people teach me one-legged balances, and then just do a simple tree, okay? And then you can't see my foot, sadly, all right? But then they say to me, no, don't lean, okay? Don't lean heavily on this side. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've got a carrying angle. If I don't, and I come to here, right? I'm going to let go of the wall now, right? I'm literally going to fall over. My body, it's physics. My body needs to balance in this way, okay? It needs to. The minute you start making me come straight, there's too much weight on that side. I'm going to fall over. Plus also that if I turn my foot out slightly, just a little bit, it helps me balance. And it's my body working it out for my body and my weight of my pelvis and my carrying angle and all of those things. Caro. And then I want to move on to Lotus quickly.
Yes. It's actually already a knee thing. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I was just wondering, so I mean, we know that like the ligaments and tendons are super strong and it's kind of impossible to tear them in yoga. I was wondering if there's still like something when it comes to like cartilage, let's say like the meniscus, and the distribution of weight and uneven distribution of weight. For example, I don't know, always like having the knee lean to one side in warrior or not. Is that like something that over time could build up to like a certain kind of injury that should be paid attention to, kind of in instructing, but more like awareness? Or I don't know. That's
so
a bit.
I'll ask you the questions, and you can kind of work it out yourself. So if we're lucky, we get somebody in Warrior 2 3 times a week for how long? Some knee type standing pose. How long? 10, 15 minutes max in a week, right? So what do normal people do, especially people who live in Europe as opposed to South Africa? But what do normal people do? They walk, right? Okay. Do they walk up and down stairs? Okay. Is the body weight the same whether they're walking up and down stairs? And I don't want to get into the technicalities of more load on the knee, but as in Warrior 2.
Sorry, there's like, I'm not sure if you can hear this, but I think
can you guys on mute?
Lauren, I think you have your sound on, and maybe there's like something happening in the background. I didn't really. I got to the part. Okay, walking stairs and such. Yeah, I think I know.
So say you're a person who lives in Berlin, and every single day you go to work, and then you go to the gym, and then you go out to restaurants, and you do all those things, and maybe you cycle to work, maybe you walk to it, maybe you get on the buses, maybe you go down into the underground, maybe you do all of those things. Do we think our cartilage is going to wear out?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay. So the amount of load is the same as in a yoga class as outside of a yoga class, right? It's healthy functional stuff. So in a yoga class, you're going to have, it depends, the load is going to change depending on what you're actually doing. But in something like Warrior 2, the load is the same as you. In fact, it's less than you going downstairs, okay, where your knee is way over. It's the same kind of trajectory. So it's the same thing. And in Warrior 2, I mean, how long do we hold a Warrior 2? And then, okay, let's take it further. Let's go, okay, what about people who go to the gym and do squats? Is anybody saying to them their cartilage is going to injure if it's not in the right alignment? Probably, actually, there are people saying that. But do you know what I mean? And again, bringing it back to, I was listening to this guy, Stu McGill, the other day. He works with powerlifters, he's a spine guy. And he works with powerlifters that can lift 600 kilograms in a squat with their knee seriously over their ankle, right? Okay, and I'm not saying go out there and your knee's going to be fine if you do that, but if you train correctly and you've got the right genetic structures, your knee is not going to damage. And in Warrior 2, it's really not. Look, if you've got a predisposition in terms of that you've had, I don't know, horrible knee surgery or whatever, it may feel something in Warrior 2, and in which case we'd say, come up a bit, back up. But you're certainly not going to wear cartilage to the bone from Warrior 2, okay? Does everybody understand that? Or if you disagree, speak up, it's really fine. Yes, no? Okay, all happy with that? All right, we've got to keep reminding ourselves that yoga is low load. It's really like going for a run is way more load on everything, pretty much, than what we do in a yoga class, right? We don't hold things, we've got the most popular sport in the world, okay, is apparently, according to research, running, okay? The world goes running. So most of you probably run at some stage in your life. We run, and people who run, for those that have been runners, they're addicted to running, and they will kill you to get you out of their way if you try to stop them going running. And they run and they run, and they end up fine. You know, it's okay. They may do too much too soon, and they need to back off a little. And some people will wear cartilage in their lives. And even if they do wear cartilage, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have pain either. I'll give you a classic example. Because I did Iyengar yoga for a long time, they probably 8, maybe 10 years in all. We used to hold headstands, and we'd hold headstands for 15 minutes, right? And we'd do a whole load of stuff up there, and I used to do it pretty much every day. And I started getting big nerve pains going down my arm, and I didn't know it was to do with headstand back then. But then, you know, I've shown you guys this, I've got very short arms, so I was really compressing my neck. So off I went for an MRI after about 2 years of trying to figure out what was going on. And the MRI said I had cervical degeneration, okay? I was in my 40s, I think, when this happened, right? Cervical degeneration. I was like, no, I've got cervical degeneration. That's just terrible. And I sent it to my 2 Iyengar yoga teachers. The one went, oh, that's terrible. And the other went, yeah, of course you have. We've all got cervical degeneration. You're in your mid-40s. What do you expect? You know, but so most people end up in their 80s and 90s, whatever, with serious degeneration, because that's how our bodies age. But it doesn't necessarily equate to pain, and it won't be because they've done Warrior 2. Like maybe short-armed headstands every single day might cause a little bit more problems, but it's not going to be Warrior 2. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Anybody else have any questions with that? I want to just speak about dorsiflex. So quickly, and then we'll talk about it more on Thursday. Okay, what I wanted to talk about was, and if we can't go into it because we've only got a few minutes and I don't want to keep you guys, I know you're busy. Right, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion of the foot in hip external rotation poses. So the classic one, most of you have seen it. So flex the foot in pigeon, flex the foot in Padmasana, in lotus. Do we have any opinions on that as yet? Mandana?
I can speak about my own body. I can't flex. I can flex very easily, but I cannot do it in pigeon. It really hurts me.
Ah, where does it hurt you?
It actually started hurting in my IT band, but I've done everything to loosen it up, and yeah, I do run and all of this. So, but still, it's a very strange, and it goes all the way up to the hip.
When you flex the foot?
Yes, only in this position though. Only in the. So for me, it's something that is not possible to be done.
Okay, I mean, explore why that is. Okay, Tegan?
I find in lotus poses or half lotus, the only pain I get is with the actual bone on the thigh. So it's just sore.
It's
not nice.
It is actually sore, especially if you do the bound Padmasana, the bound lotus, it is a killer. It's so sore. It really is. So, okay, so why, Claire, you wanted to say something?
So when it comes to pigeon, I was taught you only actually flex your foot if you've got that 90 degree, so knee to ankle 90 degree. Whereas when you're not able to do that and your legs more closed towards your Forksy bonnet, you would point your foot because in fact it would hurt and apparently wound you, but maybe just hurt and be uncomfortable.
Apparently it won't wound you. Okay, so why would the instruction be to flex the foot if your shin is more parallel to the front of the mat? Megan?
I suppose we give you.
I think this goes back to that myth about the knee. What you're saying is like in double pigeon, having that foot active to protect the knee. It's that thinking process, but obviously it actually doesn't do anything, like you say. It doesn't really change much.
Exactly, and a lot of these instructions we don't actually know, we can't pinpoint. Did they come about because of a protection issue that is translated from a physio world out there, or personal training world, or Pilates world, and it's translated into yoga? Or was it just because something like Agni Stimbasana, the fire log pose, that's what it looks like. You know, feet are flexed.
One thing I find it helps with is also just in like double pigeon or fire log, I find it holds you in the pose when you have your feet active. That's what I do prefer about it, is otherwise you can kind of just roll or like not be aware of what's happening in the body. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but that's why I do like to keep my feet active.
It's an interesting thing, and I was going to demonstrate for you, but I don't think you can see because of the black pants, but somebody needs to tell me about that afterwards so I can fix it. Okay, but if you flex the feet in Padmasana, in lotus, or flex the feet in Agni Stimbasana, what happens to your hips or your thighs?
Do they externally rotate?
They actually do less, it depends, less external rotation, but normally what happens is it pulls you in. So it's that, and I think maybe that's what that feeling is that you're getting of being solid in the pose, is when you flex the feet, it generally does this. Your knees move closer in towards you. So, I mean, do we agree that actually dorsiflexion is not knee protective? Or if you disagree, say, I'm not going to yell at you. I'll say why, tell me, you know. So it's not knee protective. So why would we say don't dorsiflex in pigeon? Opposite way around. What does dorsiflexion, what is the difference between dorsiflexion and plantarflexing if we take away the safety aspect of the knee? What's the difference? What's going to happen to the shape? Maybe Mandana said that when she does that, she gets ITB stuff. Claire?
That would literally be how much you can externally rotate. So if you're flexing, you would have less of that external rotation. So maybe the pigeon or whatever would feel more difficult or more tight. Whereas if you kind of just left the foot, whether you're allowing it to point or not activating it at all, it's a lot easier to drop into that external rotation.
Okay, so good. So why?
Muscles activating. When you get that calf muscle activating, it's sort of, I'm going to go back into the pulling and whatnot of the muscles, so it makes that hip sort of lift a little bit higher. Sorry, I'm sitting in log, so I'm thinking about in the log position, oh, my leg's lifting in this way. But in pigeon, it would sort of, you flex that calf and it just almost makes that external rotation feel a little bit hard.
Everybody push your chairs back a little bit away from your screen. Take whatever leg up. I don't know if you've got shoes on or whatever the case may be. I've got bare feet already. So take your, take your foot so it's on the side, okay? Literally your outer edge of your foot, and put it somewhere on your thighs. You need space. You're going to have to sit at the front of your chair. Put it on your thigh and flex your foot. Thigh Mandana, okay? Flex your foot, right? What's happening to your knee? Where is it? Okay, just have a look. Okay, so you're on the side. Okay, you flexed foot on the side. Okay, now turn your foot upside down. So you're on the top of your foot. Don't do anything with your knee. Just turn your foot upside down. What happens to your knee? It drops. Good pointing for those. Okay, it drops. Why is it dropping? Caro.
I mean, isn't it also just like bones in a way? Like if you flex your foot, you're kind of coming onto the tall edge in a way, which will also kind of change the orientation of like your shin bone and thigh, and so.
Yes, so it's exactly, I said in the video, and again, something I said, I'm very clear about it. I haven't heard it out there, but it just seems to make complete sense to me. Okay, so I'm making the distance less. That's all I'm doing. So the distance goes from, that's the side of my foot in dorsiflexion, to turning it upside down. So I don't know if this is clear to everybody. So there I am, pretend I've got a knee on it. There's my knee up there. If I use my ankle mobility and turn my foot and I'm not moving my knee, I just turn my foot, my knee is going to drop and give me more range for the pose. Okay? So when people come into pigeon, and especially if they don't have huge external rotation, having the foot really close to the groin, so it's almost like you're in, you know, it's close, basically, actually requires less external rotation range just coming from the hip. You're using a whole load of other things, including simply bones and distance and ankle mobility, to be able to create, and I think I demonstrated in the video where it's, you know, there I am on the side of my foot. If I just turn it up, it's just, I'm just going to drop my knee down a bit, and it may feel more comfortable for you to do that. But I need you guys to go out there and play with that, because I need you to understand it when we talk about Lotus next week, okay? And I've made a whole load of, Roxy's gone. Is she here? No, she's gone. Oh, there she is, but she's not there. Okay, so I made a whole load of videos for Roxy because she wanted to understand how to do Lotus in inversions and to do with the class you did with Laura. And I want you to understand where you can get range from that actually isn't damaging, it's actually helpful in a way, just for range. For those, you wanted to say something.
No, it was really just the way that you explained the thing about, you called it supinating the foot in the video, and I found that even just in a simple cross-legged, if I could turn my foot upside down like that, suddenly, because my knees are generally quite high, they were much, much, much lower. And I found, you said maybe external rotation. I felt like, yeah, my hip is actually, I'm just doing it now, it is actually like it's rotating a bit more.
And it isn't. Well, it can be a little bit, because your knee actually does go out a bit, but that depends on your hip structure. You know, maybe there's a slight more external rotation, but you're using you're using ankle range to create that. And normally, you know, when people sit, people sit cross-legged like this, and you get guys that are sitting with their knees up like this, and some women, they're sitting their knees up like this. But often we know in a yoga class, if we actually make them take their feet like this, their knees come down a little bit, okay? So it's just different. This is like a hip structure thing as well. So we can use these different other movements to actually help us be more comfortable in a pose, create a different shape in a pose in quite an easy way. So actually taking the knees out a little bit more. So, you know, you've got that, and also you supinate the foot. It's not the correct term, but like a hypersupinate. You turn the foot upside down, okay? Takes out, whereas this, the closer they get in together, and like Tegan was saying, and that's when we dorsiflex as well. We locked and they will go up for most of us. Some people, they don't. Okay, so it's using those different ranges to try and create shapes. Whether we should or we shouldn't, I don't know. I quite like it. I like playing with finding, hang on a second, and I'll show you a video where I don't use my hands for Lotus at all, and all I'm doing is using my, you do use a little bit of glute, but using my ankle to move myself into different shapes into it. So it's just an interest thing. But if anybody's confused about that, you need to come back to me and chat about it, because on Thursday, I'm going to send you a message. I want you to have all done this little kind of video move. They're done. But does it make sense that you can use these different joint ranges to create shape? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, it's good, but it takes us away from the whole conversation about dorsiflexing the foot in pigeon to protect it, because Mandana's gone. But for her, dorsiflexion is actually creating, because it makes it tougher. So she's feeling it down for her in her ITB and things like that. I'm over time, so I don't want to keep you guys. It's 5 past. Janine, you wanted to say something? Guys, if you need to hop off you go. Nice to see you all. Janine? Can't hear you.
Sorry.
No, it's
you said you made a whole lot of videos about the Lotus and the external hip rotation. Where are those?
On my phone. I just did them because Roxy couldn't understand how to wriggle her foot into Lotus in inversion. So then I did a whole load, and what I'll do is I've edited them quickly, and I'll send. I'm just going to send, because they're literally like 15 and handstands and on the floor, and so I'll send you some pertinent ones. But more importantly, what I want you to do is try and play with what happens when you move your leg in different shapes. You know, where your leg is, like Tegan was saying. You know, if you put your dorsiflex and you put your ankle onto your thigh in something like lotus, it's sore. You know, so let's get away from that to create a pose. You know, and what I want you guys to know, to try and work out, is whether the safety cues are warranted or not, and what else we can do in terms of shapes of poses. Is that okay for your body and for your students' body? So it's like, you know, it's like a big puzzle, putting things together into poses. Okay, so I'll send you those videos and then see you on Thursday. Anybody got any questions, or go? Kara's finished her pasta. Cute. Janine, did you have another question? Or
sorry, I just want to confirm what homework or what you need from us by Thursday.
I'm not telling you anything. Go look at your schedule. If I haven't said to for this lotus thing, I just want you to have a play, but I'll send it to you on the group. Everything else is on your schedule, because I know you've got a load of work for Laura. So off the top of my head, that schedule has got everything. Ooh, so I think it was Sandra pointed out that she's obviously skipped ahead. In the hips, I say something like hips 1 and 2, 3, just count the numbers, because they're labeled slightly different. You'll figure it out as you go along. I'll post what she found on the group, okay? So, but that's not for Thursday, that's next week's stuff. Okay, any questions further than that? No? All happy-ish? Okay, bye guys, nice to see you all. Good waving.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.